An Ontario homeowner is now facing assault charges after confronting an intruder accused of entering his home in the middle of the night.
A Vaughan homeowner is facing multiple charges for firing a gun to prevent his vehicle from being stolen.
Canada has never been more dangerous than it is right now. They are defending themselves, their family, or their property, and then, of course, finding themselves under arrest. You are more or less helpless.
We will also protect the freedoms of law-abiding people with a new castle law that allows you to take whatever action necessary to protect your family against home invaders.
Pierre Poilievre has promised to introduce a stand-your-ground castle law amidst Canada having a crime wave and some of the worst self-defense laws in the world. And now, thanks to a vote at the recent Conservative convention, castle law is official Conservative Party policy. And this went viral. And what if I told you that this is a promise unlike any other because it could bring about incredible positive change if enacted. And in fact, it may be so popular that Mark Carney may end up adopting it himself, just like he's done in the past for other conservative policies. My name is Ellie. I've worked in Canadian politics for the last decade, and I've covered it for the past 6 years as a journalist. And in today's video, which I've divided into 5 simple parts, and with the help of Tracey Wilson, a prominent firearms rights and self-defense advocate, we will break down the Conservative Party's new policy and explain why it is time for Canada to adopt castle law. But first, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. And consider supporting my independent journalism for less than $5 a month because I do not take a dime in government funding. And now, let's get to it. This is Simply Politics.
Journalism and commentary 1-year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild the foundation. You have to retell the story.
Market conservative
The news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged.
Part 1. Canada's status quo. You probably don't need me to tell you that crime in Canada has increased. A Fraser Institute report found that between 2014 and 2022, the violent crime rate in Canada increased by 43.8%. Property crime has also considerably increased, with Canada experiencing higher levels of property crime than the United States. And there have been several alarming, violent break-ins. Here's how Tracey Wilson of the Canadian Coalitions for Firearms Rights explains the situation.
So you've got this problem of repeat violent offenders being churned back out onto the street after being arrested. Canada has never been more dangerous than it is right now.
Unlike in the United States, where Americans enjoy self-defense protections, Canada's self-defense legal framework is narrower and dependent on interpretation. Self-defense in Canada is governed by Section 34 of the Criminal Code, which states that a person is not guilty of an offense if they reasonably believe force or a threat of force is being used against them or someone else, they act for the purpose of defending themselves or another person, and if their actions are, quote, reasonable within the circumstances, unquote. The key word here is reasonable. Whether something is reasonable or not is determined by the courts, and there are many factors that are taken into consideration.
There's a whole litany of criteria that have to be met. You know, the nature of the force, the extent of the force, your role in the incident, whether the other party had a weapon, the size, age, gender of the perpetrator, the size, age, gender of you. You know, it goes on and on and on. So in order to meet those criteria, you know, it's sort of this perfect storm.
With this lack of clear-cut self-defense protections in Canada, there have been several cases of homeowners being arrested and charged for defending their property. In 2025, in Lindsay, Ontario, a man confronted an alleged armed intruder in his apartment at 3 a.m. During the altercation, the man used a knife, and afterward, that man, the resident, was charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. In 2023, a man in Milton, Ontario, was charged with second-degree murder after defending his home against uninvited people. And in 2019, a man in Collingwood, Ontario, shot and killed 2 masked men who had zip-tied them and held them at gunpoint in a chaotic home invasion, and he, the homeowner, was charged with manslaughter. Now, charges are often eventually dropped, but the legal process can be long, expensive, and stressful.
Sometimes the process is the punishment. They are defending themselves, their family, or their property, and then, of course, finding themselves under arrest.
It's also important to note that in Canada, you cannot obtain a firearm for the sole purpose of self-defense. Part 2, the conservative policy. Pierre Poilievre has spoken in favor of castle law in the past. The difference now is that castle law is official Conservative Party of Canada policy. Policy A1, which passed with over 90% support at the recent Conservative Convention, states that the Conservative Party supports an amendment to the Criminal Code to, quote, presume any force, including lethal force, is reasonable when used to defend against an uninvited intruder in one's home. Canadians protecting themselves, their families, or their property inside their home should not face prosecution for acting decisively against intruders.
What this will do is it will amend Section 34 of the Criminal Code and make the instances where lethal force is reasonable, it would make them clearer.
And during his convention speech, Pierre Poilievre reaffirmed castle law, his support for it, and he promised to implement it if elected Prime Minister.
We will also protect the freedoms of law-abiding people with a new castle law that allows you to take whatever action necessary to protect your family against home invaders.
This new policy and Pierre Poilievre's promise in his speech garnered significant attention. I was at the Conservative Convention to cover it, to bring you guys honest, fact-based, and non-left-wing biased journalism. And among all of the posts I made throughout the entire convention, they were among the most popular with hundreds of thousands of impressions. Pierre Poilievre went viral for promising castle law. And there's a reason for that. Now, I should note that this policy is non-binding, meaning that what is adopted at the convention does not translate into being mandatory in the Conservative platform. Pierre Poilievre could not have castle law on his platform if he chose to. That said, it's very unlikely, given that he supported castle law in the past. He reaffirmed castle law at the actual convention, and the members voted overwhelmingly for it. It is almost certain that castle law will be in the next Conservative platform. Part 3, why castle law works. The thing with castle law is that it actually works. Research shows that pro-self-defense laws have the potential to lower Canada's way too high crime rates. An American study surveying more than 1,800 incarcerated felons, asking them about their own decision-making, found 81% of the felons saying that a quote-unquote smart criminal tries to determine whether a potential victim is harmed. 74% of the felons believing that burglars avoid occupied homes out of fear of being shot. 40% of the felons admitting that they had avoided committing a specific crime because they feared the victim was armed. And get this, 57% of the felons saying that criminals fear being shot more by private citizens than by the police. Get that. The criminals fear someone in the home with a gun more than they do a police officer. We can also look at the rates of property crime in the US, where all 50 states have some sort of castle doctrine, and compare them to Canada, where there is not. And well, the numbers speak for themselves, with the US having experienced lower rates of property crime than Canada.
You are far less likely to become a victim if the perpetrator knows that breaking into your home would probably end his life, right? So when they're considering darkening someone's doorway, kicking in their door and coming in, they are looking for unarmed, helpless victims. That's what they're looking for.
Part 4, Scrutinizing Anti-Castle Law Arguments. Pushes to bring castle law to Canada has not come without liberal pushback. And on this show, we believe it is important to look at both sides in order to fully understand an issue. The first argument, advanced by Globe and Mail columnist Andrew Coyne, is that castle law could lead to unnecessary deaths by eliminating second guessing and lead to cases like what took place in Houston, Texas, where a boy was shot and killed while playing Nicky Nicky Nine Doors, where one rings a doorbell and runs away. I asked Wilson about that concern.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, the idea isn't that you'd be coming home from work and strapping a 9mm to your hip, you know? It wouldn't be anything like that. The idea behind the castle law change, the amendment to Section 34 of the Criminal Code, would just be in the way the process is handled afterwards. So, you know, safe storage regulations would still be in play. You know, we're not talking about leaving a loaded sidearm beside the door so that you can shoot people if they come in. Like, you know, there's always these extreme examples that are brought up. And I think, you know, for the majority of us that can think rationally, the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? If there's a break glass in the middle of the night and I hear some people running up the stairs, I should be able to access my biometric safe, defend my life and defend the lives of those in my charge, and of course not face a life-altering, life-ruining process of punishment. So,
an Ottawa-based criminal lawyer, meanwhile, argues that the existing reasonable forces test in the criminal code is clear and appropriate. He notes, quote, Canadians already have the right to defend themselves. They don't have the right to be misled by politicians who know better. The only thing most Canadians need protection from now is politicians who think dishonest fear-mongering is a form of public service. Here is what Wilson had to say about that.
So you call 911. The average response time, even here in an urban center, is between 7 and 11 minutes. And if you think of what an assailant could do to you, particularly if they're armed, even if it's not a gun, if it's a knife, what can a 200-pound guy do to me in 7 to 11 minutes with a knife? Right. So if I don't have any better method of defending myself, what's going to happen to me? I am not going to make it. So yes, you are more or less helpless.
Part 5, Why Carney Might Embrace Castle Law. Self-defense is not only common sense, but it is extremely popular. A lazy poll found that 87% believe that citizens should have the right to defend themselves with reasonable force if an intruder breaks into their homes. Castle law is also supported by Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. So with Pierre Poilievre promising to introduce a very popular castle law, and with major premiers endorsing castle law, Wilson thinks it's possible that Mark Carney may end up adopting castle law himself for the country, similarly to how he adopted other conservative policies like getting rid of the federal carbon tax.
Carney's been pretty clear. He's looking for a majority government. I don't think just relying on Orange Man Bad is enough to give it to him. And you're right. We've seen him kind of come to the middle on a lot of these policies that, you know, may be stealing from the Conservatives' playbook. This would be one that would be very popular, obviously. And of course, a lot of policy agenda, as you know, is driven by polling and what people want. And I think if Carney's smart and he is, objectively a smart guy, I think he will come to the middle on a lot more policies. This would be ideally one that would gain a lot of support.
My friends, Pierre Poilievre went viral for all the right reasons when he endorsed and promised Castle Law. And to be honest, if Mark Carney decides to take inspiration and implement Castle Law himself, then good, because Canadians are desperate for better protections amidst unprecedented crime affecting our country. If you agree that it's time for Canadians to have proper self-defense rights and that it is time for Castle Law in Canada, then sign the petition below and consider supporting my independent journalism for less than $5 a month by becoming a channel member. Until next time, God bless.